I'm sure that people have always wondered, how did Illidan and the Black Temple become a thing? To understand that, we need to talk about the events leading up to his journey into Outland, the rise of the Blood Elves and their new leader, and more importantly, the attack on the Lich King, which would change everything on Azeroth. If this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome. My name is Kael'thas, and I'm in the middle of a Bridging the World of Warcraft Chronicle series. That means I'm taking the lore contained within these books and condensing it even more than it already is. I'm not diving into the deep details or the novels that have more information, just sticking to what's written in the books. So again, apart from what you read in the title of the video or saw in the thumbnail, I'll be sharing other sections of lore that may not be related to what grabbed your attention in the first place. In essence, I'm telling the story in order as the books tell it. Currently, we're on Volume 3, but if you want to start from the beginning, then I suggest clicking the link in the tab up above or in the description down below. That will lead you to a video that contains all 10 episodes covering the lore in Volume 1. But if you're already caught up with the story, then let's continue our journey into the tales of Azeroth. In the aftermath of Lordaeron's fall, the High Elves of Kael'thas faced devastation of their own. Arthas had left their homeland a blighted ruin and tainted the Sunwell, the very heart of their society. In mourning, the High Elves renamed themselves Blood Elves in honor of their fallen people. With King Anasterion dead at Arthas' hand, rule passed to Prince Kael'thas Sunstrider, who had been away in Dalaran when the attack occurred. By the time he rushed home, the battle was already lost. The surviving elves greeted him with poorly hidden resentment, feeling he had chosen the comforts of Dalaran over defending his own people. Kael'thas offered no excuses for his absence. Understanding their bitterness was justified. He committed himself to rebuilding the kingdom, though he had always felt somewhat distant from his insular, isolationist people, having long preferred exploring the wider world. He toured the ruins of Silvermoon City and attended his father's funeral, struggling to truly connect with his grieving people, yet his love for his kingdom remained genuine and drove him forward. That love led him to the corrupted Sunwell, where he was horrified to discover the fount's dark energies slowly spreading throughout Kael'thas, threatening to poison the minds and hearts of every Blood Elf in time. With no reliable way to cleanse the Sunwell, Kael'thas and the kingdom's senior Blood Elves concluded there was only one option left. Kael'thas gathered Kael'thas' most powerful magi and performed a ritual that destroyed the Sunwell entirely, unleashing a burst of energy that wiped out the remaining scourge in the area. The fount's destruction came at a steep cost. Having lived their entire lives steeped on its energies, the Blood Elves had become deeply dependent on arcane magic, and losing the Sunwell plunged them into a withdrawal that would only worsen with time, leaving many ill and weakened. Despite this troubling development, Kael'thas turned his focus to the more immediate threat of the Scourge, still entrenched throughout Lordaeron. Believing peace for his people depended on defeating the undead, he gathered his strongest soldiers and marched into Lordaeron to aid the Alliance. Despite his father's earlier secession from the faction, he appointed the ranger Lotharmar Theron as Regent Lord to govern Kael'thas in his absence. His departure surprised few Blood Elves. Once again, their prince was leaving his homeland behind for distant lands. The largest Alliance resistance force in Lordaeron was gathered in Silverpine Forest under Grand Marshal Othmar Garithos, a man who owed his command to circumstance rather than merit. Ill-tempered and deeply xenophobic, he accepted Kael'thas and his Blood Elves into the army purely out of necessity, while making no effort to hide his contempt for them. Despite the hostility, Kael'thas and his Blood Elves proved themselves among the most effective fighters in the Alliance army, pushing through Silverpine Forest toward the ruins of Dalaran. As they neared the city, Kael'thas sensed something deeply wrong. The air crackled with unstable arcane energy, and the ground trembled, as if a massive storm of magic was brewing nearby. Whatever was causing the disturbance was sending the Scourge into a frenzy, flooding the region with undead in overwhelming numbers. While pulling his soldiers back from the front, Kael'thas encountered a group of Night Elves, Maiev, Tyrande, Malfurion, and others, who had sailed from Kalimdor in pursuit of Illidan. Despite millennia of separation and vastly different cultures, Kael'thas was eager to work with his distant cousins, hoping to learn something that might help ease his people's magical withdrawal. He theorized that Illidan, the powerful demon the Night Elves were hunting, was likely behind the arcane disturbance near Dalaran and the resulting Scourge frenzy. The divided elven peoples united to pursue a common goal. The Lich King, watching through the eyes of his undead, had been tracking Illidan's movements in Dalaran and understood what he was attempting. Illidan was drawing on the city's ley lines to amplify the Eye of Sargeras into a weapon powerful enough to strike the Frozen Throne. Aware that his imprisonment made him vulnerable, the Lich King unleashed the Scourge on Dalaran to stop the spellwork, but they arrived too late. Illidan completed his preparations and unleashed a massive tempest of arcane energy at Icecrown Glacier. The sheer power of the spell buckled the earth and tore open fissures across the world. Wave after wave of magic hammered the Frozen Throne until it cracked, leaving the Lich King exposed and vulnerable. A few more strikes would have finished him entirely. Before Illidan could deliver the killing blow, the combined Night Elf and Blood Elf armies swept into his forces and threw his spellwork into chaos. The Eye of Sargeras shattered. The storm of magic above Icecrown fell silent, and in an instant, Illidan's near victory was undone. Illidan was furious that the Night Elves had inadvertently saved the Lich King, but they had no regrets. His spell had already caused widespread devastation and would have wrought far worse. Illidan believed they were being dangerously short-sighted, too unwilling to embrace the sacrifices his war against the Legion truly demanded. Before we continue, I'd like to mention that if you're enjoying this content, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you feel inclined to support the work that I'm doing, you can check out my membership options here on YouTube or on Patreon. I'm really grateful for all of those who have supported this massive project that I've been working on for quite some time now, and I do offer early access to all those people who have signed up. So if you're interested, check out the links down below, and let's get back to the story. Knowing Kil'jaeden would punish him for failing to destroy the Lich King, Illidan needed to find refuge and regroup. He chose the world of Draenor, which he had glimpsed in Gul'dan's memories as a barren, largely lifeless realm, ideal for carving out a sanctuary. With most of his forces destroyed at Dalaran, he ordered Lady Vash and her surviving Naga to seek new allies while he scouted ahead. Near Dalaran, Illidan discovered a lingering rift in reality, the remnant of the portal Kel'Thuzad had used to summon Archimonde. Using it alongside the knowledge from the Skull of Gul'dan, he forged a new portal leading to Draenor. What he found was not the dead world he expected, but the shattered realm of Outland, riddled with portals to unknown corners of the cosmos, and partially conquered by the Pit Lord Magtheridon and a host of demons. Returning to Azeroth was not an option. The Night Elves would have him imprisoned immediately. Illidan resolved to conquer Outland and use it as a staging ground. But first, he would need to seal off the Legion's access to the realm and deal with Magtheridon. Before he could act, Maiev and her Watchers caught up with him. Without his Naga or the Eye of Sargeras, Illidan was vulnerable. Maiev outmaneuvered him and sealed him in an enchanted cage designed to nullify his powers. After months of relentless pursuit, vengeance was finally hers. With Illidan defeated, Tyrande and Malfurion returned to Kalimdor to tend to the wounded Nordrassil and secure the Second Well of Eternity. Their departure left Kael'thas and his Blood Elves to face the challenges of Lordaeron alone. Kael'thas rejoined Garithos and the rest of the Alliance, taking control of Dalaran and beginning reconstruction. The moment that should have felt triumphant was overshadowed by the Blood Elves' deepening magical withdrawal, which grew more debilitating by the day. Even Kael'thas struggled to bear the burden of addiction. He and his elves attempted to draw power from Dalaran's ley lines, but it was never enough to satisfy their cravings. Life under Garithos only deepened Kael'thas' misery. The Grand Marshal constantly belittled the Blood Elves and relegated them to menial tasks, widening the rift between himself and Kael'thas with each passing day. Lady Vash had been watching this deterioration from the shadows. Seeing the Blood Elves worn down by withdrawal and demoralized by Garithos' mistreatment, she judged the moment right to approach Kael'thas directly. She reassured him that the Naga harbored no ill will toward his people, framing the earlier battle outside Dalaran as a conflict born of Illidan's personal feud with the Night Elves. Kael'thas was wary at first, but Lady Vash quickly proved more trustworthy and dependable than his own commander. When the Scourge launched a massive counterattack on Dalaran, Garithos divided the Blood Elf forces and sent Kael'thas to hold the flank with inadequate numbers. On the verge of being overrun, Kael'thas accepted aid from Lady Vash and her Naga. Together, they held the line and protected the entire Alliance army from being overwhelmed. Rather than reward Kael'thas for saving the Alliance's flank, Garithos condemned him for consorting with the Naga, branding it an act of unforgivable treason. He had the Blood Elves shackled and thrown into Dalaran's dungeons to await execution. Kael'thas was stunned. He had weathered Garithos' intolerance for months, but this was beyond anything he could accept. In the darkness below the city, his faith in the Alliance died entirely. Lady Vash found him there and extended an offer. The Alliance had nothing left to give the Blood Elves, but Illidan could give them everything: freedom from their chains and a cure for their addiction to magic. With no future left in the Alliance and no way to return to Quel'Thalas without shame, Kael'thas accepted. He could not help his people from within a dungeon, or from a world that had already abandoned them. The path to saving the Blood Elves lay somewhere beyond Azeroth. Illidan's assault had cracked the Frozen Throne, and the Lich King's essence began bleeding through the fracture. As his power leaked away, his grip on the Scourge weakened, and free will slowly returned to many of the undead wandering Lordaeron. Most were lost and confused, but others saw opportunity in their master's weakness. Sylvanas Windrunner was among them. Since her death, she had raged ceaselessly against the Lich King's control, always to no avail. Now, with his power fading, she seized her chance. She rallied other free-willed undead around a single purpose: revenge. Starting with Arthas Menethil, the Death Knight who had destroyed her kingdom and torn away her future. The Dreadlords, Varamathras and the others, were also moving against Arthas. Having learned of the Lich King's weakened state, they seized control of part of the Scourge with ambitions of eventually invading Northrend and destroying the Lich King themselves. Eliminating Arthas was the logical first step. Arthas was in no condition to hold them off. As the Lich King's power waned, so did his own, leaving the once feared Death Knight hunted on multiple fronts. But fighting back wasn't his primary concern. The Lich King had ordered him to abandon Lordaeron entirely and bring the remaining loyal Scourge to Northrend before Kil'jaeden could strike at the Frozen Throne. The Lich King was right to fear retaliation, but it would not come from the Dreadlords or Sylvanas. It would come from Outland. Kael'thas and Lady Vash led their people through Outland's barren Hellfire Peninsula in search of Illidan, finding no trace of him for days. What they found instead was Warden Maiev Shadowsong, who had captured Illidan but became stranded on Outland after her return portal vanished. Maiev had been cautiously navigating the Shattered Realm when she discovered Honorhold, a bastion established by Alliance soldiers known as the Sons of Lothar. Before she could reach it, Kael'thas and Lady Vash ambushed her forces. Badly outnumbered, the Watchers were routed and Illidan was freed. Despite the urge to finish Maiev once and for all, Illidan let her go, having learned from the Broken Isles that pursuing her was a costly distraction. He wouldn't make that same mistake twice. Illidan sized up his new forces with approval. The Blood Elves were skilled and loyal, and their leader Kael'thas was a gifted sorcerer, though clearly tormented by his people's addiction. Illidan was blunt. There was no cure for the Blood Elves' magical withdrawal, but he promised to find them a new source of arcane power greater than the Sunwell itself. It wasn't the answer Kael'thas had hoped for, but it was compelling enough. He had already come too far to turn back, and he saw in Illidan a mastery of magic that was rare even among the greatest sorcerers. He committed himself fully to Illidan's cause. Illidan's plan for Outland was methodical. First, shut down the Legion's portals to cut off their reinforcements, then drive straight at Magtheridon's seat of power, the Black Temple in Shadowmoon Valley. The campaign was brutal and unrelenting. Illidan demanded everything from his followers and offered little acknowledgement in return, yet his iron sense of purpose drove his army forward. As they closed in on the Black Temple, Illidan gained unexpected allies. The Broken, a tribe called the Ash-Tongue, led by a former Draenei exarch named Akama. Akama had his own reasons for wanting the Black Temple taken. The stronghold had once been a sacred Draenei site, and reclaiming it was a matter of redemption for himself and his people in the eyes of the Draenei race. His goals aligned with Illidan's, and the two joined forces. Illidan's army stormed the Black Temple, facing waves of Fel Orcs, warriors transformed by Magtheridon's blood into crimson-skinned, battle-crazed soldiers, alongside Legion demons and war machines. The defenders were fierce, but Illidan and his forces cut through them and reached Magtheridon himself. The combined strength of Illidan, Lady Vash, Akama, and Kael'thas proved overwhelming. Despite Magtheridon's terrible power, he fell with alarming speed. Illidan chose not to kill the Pit Lord. Having seen what Magtheridon's blood had done to the Fel Orcs, he recognized its value. It could create more single-minded, war-driven soldiers for his own army. Magtheridon was more useful as a captive than a corpse. Illidan then addressed the remaining defenders and gave them a simple choice: submit or die. Most knelt, including not only Fel Orcs but demons as well. Kael'thas and Akama were troubled by the inclusion of demons in their ranks, but Illidan argued that their knowledge of the Legion's strengths and weaknesses made them invaluable assets for the war ahead. That war came sooner than anticipated. Kil'jaeden appeared before Illidan and his forces, having learned of the insurrection on Outland. Though his trust in Illidan had eroded further, the Demon Lord still saw him as a useful tool, one who had gathered powerful new allies and a growing army. Kil'jaeden issued an ultimatum: return to Azeroth and destroy the Lich King, and Outland would be Illidan's to keep. Refuse, and Kil'jaeden would tear the realm from his grasp and destroy him. For Illidan, this was an unexpected gift. He needed more time to prepare for his true war against the Legion, and Kil'jaeden had just handed it to him. He feigned obedience once again and began rallying his forces for the invasion of Azeroth. Using one of Outland's many portals, Illidan forged a new gateway back to Azeroth. He did not bring his full army. Akama and a portion of his forces were left behind to hold Outland in his absence. With his course set and his deception intact, Illidan Stormrage returned to Azeroth to do what Kil'jaeden demanded, and what he himself had been planning all along. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing, please check out my YouTube, Patreon, or Twitch memberships. And a big shout out to all the names on the screen here. You mean so much to me. Thank you so much for your help. And with that, I'll see you guys next time on the Tales of Azeroth.